As companies try to adjust to the rise of hybrid workers across the country, more office buildings are being converted into residential spaces. Makes a whole lot of sense. In New York City, nearly 50 buildings are enrolled in the city's office conversion program, which kicked off last summer. That's according to a report from Axios, which says 4 buildings are already getting converted into space for 2,100 housing units. That's a lot of housing at a time where housing is very much needed. That's why Kate Marino is joining us now. She's a business editor at Axios and the author of that article that I just quoted. Okay, thanks for joining us, first of all. This is a conversation that I'm having with a lot of people. You walk around New York City, you walk around San Francisco, there is such a need for housing. Costs are going up. Can you talk to us about why the city is accelerating these conversions of office spaces? Is it possible? Is it legal? What are the holdups?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. And I mean, I think as soon as kind of we had hunkered down for a few months during the pandemic and we saw that everyone was working from home and we wondered if anyone was going to come back to the office, people already were talking about this idea of converting office space into housing. It just takes a couple years to really get the ball rolling. And from the city's standpoint, they wanted to help facilitate the process because it's very expensive. It takes a long time. There's a lot of regulatory hurdles. So whereas if you think about pre-pandemic, if a building owner wanted to engage in some kind of conversion, it would just be up to them to figure out the economics, figure out the regulatory landscape, figure out the investment, and just do it. Now, the city is saying, for the sake of our city, and, we don't want this empty space that's blighted, Midtown. We want to make sure our tax base doesn't decrease. We actually want to help with the process. So we're going to facilitate the process.
And talk to us about what that looks like and how difficult has it been up until now? Because, I mean, New York City, of course, one of the biggest issues that New York has been dealing with is also an increase in migrants, asylum seekers. There needs to be a place to house them. They're dealing with this whole, the shelter or guaranteed shelter law. So it seems in the best interest of the city to accelerate this process. What was holding back the conversions? What do the changes look like?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, there's a program called the Office Conversion Accelerator, and that isn't really a rule change. That's just simply kind of a brain trust of city agencies that building owners can tap into if they apply to this program. So this brain trust kind of helps them identify barriers, figure out plans to overcome barriers, figure out what the zoning issues are. Things like that. It's sort of a resource that didn't exist before because the city wasn't, actively involved in facilitating this. What will be a bigger change is if a package of proposed rule changes passes City Council this year, which Mayor Adams' administration has proposed. And some of those changes, they would basically just make a lot more buildings eligible. There's kind of some tedious changes, but they would make the age of the building, it could be buildings as new as those built in 1990 instead of only ones that are much older. It would free up additional neighborhoods and office districts where you could do conversions, whereas right now those are limited. So it's sort of zoning changes like that would just make a lot more buildings eligible. And
this, I guess, what we could call an increase in supply of space, which was for office and now could be for housing. Is this all related to the pandemic and that hybrid model that I guess anybody who wanted to go into has remained in that way?
Yes. It's a whole different work world that we're living in. So, I mean, if you even look at, I think it's something like a quarter of people now who are hardcore hybrid or, work from home that weren't before, that's a huge amount of butts and seats, as they say, that are not there anymore in the office. So it has everything to do with the pandemic. And as we've seen with all kinds of changes that stemmed from the kind of pandemic era economy, we're only starting to see kind of the longer term results and the longer term changes to the way we work, the way we live, the way cities look, the way cities are set up, and all that stuff.
And you can't blame those working from home in this cold in particular. Kate, great to have you.
Thank you.